Welcome back, everyone. Really glad you're here today. Pull up a chair. What I'm about to share with you is one of those cases that stays with you, the kind that quietly rewires how you think about the people closest to you. So settle in. This one matters. She walked into my office on a Tuesday morning in late October, and before she even sat down, she said something I have never forgotten. She said, I need you to tell me if I'm crazy, because either I've lost my mind completely or my entire family has been lying to me for 37 years. I told her to sit down. She did. Then she placed a manila envelope on the coffee table between us, pushed it toward me slowly, and said, My mother died 4 weeks ago, and when we went through her things, we found this. Inside that envelope were 3 documents. The first was a birth certificate, not hers, or at least not the one she'd had her whole life. The second was a private adoption agreement dated January 14th, 1987, signed by both her parents and a lawyer whose name she didn't recognize. The third was a handwritten letter from her mother, addressed to her by name, that started with the words, By the time you read this, I'll be gone, and I'm sorry I never had the courage to say this while I was alive. She hadn't finished reading that letter yet. She told me she'd gotten through the first 2 paragraphs and had to stop. She said her hands started shaking so badly she couldn't hold the paper anymore. She'd been carrying that envelope around for 4 weeks. She hadn't told her husband. She hadn't told her brother. She came to me first. Before we go further, I want to say this clearly. Every family situation is different. What works for one person will not work for another. The stories I share here come from real clinical experience, but they are never meant to be a blueprint for your own life. If you're dealing with something heavy right now, please reach out to a licensed professional. What I offer here is perspective, not prescription. These conversations are complicated, and you deserve support that's built around you specifically. Her name is Renata. She's 44 years old and lives in Columbus, Ohio. She works as a hospital administrator, the kind of job where you manage chaos calmly and keep everything running smoothly behind the scenes. She's been married for 16 years to a man named David. They have 2 kids, 12 and 9. From the outside, her life looked steady, organized. She was the person in her family who handled things. When her mother got sick 2 years ago, Renata was the one who coordinated the doctors, managed the insurance, handled the bills. She was the one in the room at the end. Renata grew up in a small town outside of Columbus. Her parents had been together since high school. Her father passed away when she was 22. Her mother, Carol, lived alone after that, and Renata made sure she was taken care of. She called every Sunday. She drove out for every holiday. She described her mother as private, not particularly warm, but reliable, a woman of routines. She said they weren't close in a deep, emotional way, but she never questioned that they were family. It just never occurred to her to question it. When Carol passed, Renata and her brother Marcus went through the house together. Carol had been organized in that particular way of people who grew up with very little. Everything labeled, every document in its place. They found the envelope in a fireproof box in the back of the bedroom closet. Renata's name was written on the outside in her mother's handwriting. Marcus saw it. He said, That's for you. I'll give you some space. And he left the room. Renata said later that she thought it was going to be a letter about the house, maybe some final instructions. She wasn't braced for anything. She opened it right there, in her mother's bedroom, standing next to the closet. She read the birth certificate first and didn't understand what she was looking at. The name on it was hers, Renata Marie, but the parents listed were not Carol and Gerald Simmons. The mother's name was someone she had never heard of. The father's line was blank. She read it twice. Then she saw the adoption papers, the date, the signatures, her parents' names, and then the lawyer's name, which she would later look up and confirm had practiced family law in Franklin County for 30 years before retiring. This was not a forgery. This was not a mistake. She sat down on her mother's bed and read the beginning of the letter. Her mother wrote that she had always meant to tell her, that she and Gerald had tried for years to have children and couldn't, that a private adoption had been arranged through a contact of Gerald's, someone at his workplace. that the biological mother was a young woman who couldn't care for a child, that they had loved Renata completely and immediately and had told themselves the secret didn't matter because she was theirs in every way that counted. And then she wrote something that Renata said broke her in half. Carol wrote, "I know this doesn't excuse the silence. I just want you to know that every single day I loved you as if you had come from my own body, and I was too afraid of losing that to ever risk telling you the truth." Renata stopped reading there. She folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and drove 2 hours to Columbus. She didn't call anyone. She went home, put the kids to bed, waited until David was asleep, and then sat at the kitchen table until 4 in the morning. She said she didn't cry that night. She said she felt like someone had reached inside her chest and removed something fundamental. Not grief, exactly, more like disorientation, like the floor had shifted and she wasn't sure yet how far. She came to see me the next morning. She called my office before it opened and left a message asking for the earliest appointment I had. When she sat down, the first thing she said was that she needed to understand whether what she was feeling was normal or whether something was wrong with her. She said, "I'm not angry. I don't know why I'm not angry. Shouldn't I be angry?" I told her there's no should with grief. She looked at me like I'd said something she hadn't considered. We talked for a long time in that first session. She described her childhood in careful, precise detail. She was thorough in the way that people are when they're searching for something, going back over memories, looking for clues they might have missed. She mentioned that she had always looked different from her brother. Marcus was broad-shouldered and dark, like their father. Renata was small-framed, lighter-skinned, with features that didn't quite match either parent. She said she'd heard comments about it her whole life, family friends, saying she must have gotten her looks from way back. She'd never thought anything of it. It was just one of those things. She said, "I feel like I've been living in a house that didn't have a foundation, and no one told me." She asked me whether she should tell her brother. I didn't answer that directly. I asked her what she was most afraid of. She thought about it for a long time. Then she said, "I'm afraid that Marcus already knows." That was the moment everything shifted. I asked her why she thought that. She said that when he handed her the envelope, he said, "That's for you." Not, "I wonder what that is," or "What do you think that's about?" He said it like he knew exactly what was inside, like he was relieved to give it to her and walk away. She went home after that first session and she called Marcus. She didn't lead with anything. She just asked him directly, did he know? There was a pause on the line. And then he said, "Mom made me promise not to say anything until she was gone. I've known since I was 17. He had known for 27 years. He told her that their mother had told him by accident. He'd overheard a phone call Carol was having with someone and confronted her about it. Carol had broken down and begged him to keep the secret. She'd told him it would destroy Renata. Marcus had agreed to stay quiet. He said, "I wanted to tell you so many times, especially after Dad died. I almost did, but then I thought about what it would do to you and I couldn't." Renata told me she sat with the phone in her hand for a long time after they hung up. She said, "I'm not angry at Marcus either, and I don't know what that means about me." She came back the following week, and the week after that. She brought the letter the third time and read it to me out loud, the whole thing. She cried for the first time during that session. Not loud crying, she was quiet about it, the way some people are when they've been holding something in for so long that even the release is controlled. But she got through the whole letter. There was something else in the letter she hadn't mentioned at first. At the end, Carol had written a name. The name of Renata's biological mother, and below it, a city. Her mother had written, "I don't know if she's still there. I don't know if she'd want to be found, but I thought you deserved to have the choice." That was the piece Renata wasn't ready to talk about yet. She circled around it for weeks. She told me once that she Googled the name and then closed the browser before the results loaded. She said, "I don't know if I want another story that might not be what I need." What I came to understand about Renata over many sessions was that her deepest wound was not the adoption itself. It wasn't even the secret. It was the letter. Because in the letter, her mother had finally been honest, and Renata kept saying, "She knew me. She knew me my whole life. Why couldn't she just tell me?" That question doesn't have a clean answer, but it's the question that mattered most. Over the months we worked together, I explained to Renata something about the psychology of family secrets, particularly ones that are kept across decades. There's a phenomenon in family systems therapy that researchers call a loyalty bind. It's when a family member holds a secret not to protect themselves, but because they believe revealing the truth will cause more damage than keeping it. Carol was trapped in that bind for 37 years. That doesn't make it right, but understanding it can help separate the act from the intent. I explained that what Renata was experiencing, the numbness, the lack of immediate anger, the strange calm, was actually a very recognized response to identity-level trauma. When the core story we tell ourselves about who we are is suddenly disrupted, the brain doesn't always produce fury right away. Sometimes it produces quiet, a kind of suspension. It's the mind's way of buying time while it figures out how to reorganize. Together, we looked at what her sense of self was actually built on. This is important work because Renata's identity wasn't only built on being Carol's daughter. It was built on her own life, 16 years of marriage, 2 children she adored, a career she had worked hard for, friendships that were real. None of that had changed. The origin story was different, the life was the same. We talked about what it means to grieve someone who lied to you and love them anyway. That's a complicated kind of grief. You're mourning the person and also mourning the relationship you thought you had. You're trying to hold both things, the love and the betrayal, at the same time. I reminded Renata that those two things don't cancel each other out. You can be hurt by someone and still love them. You can be angry at someone and still miss them. Grief doesn't require you to choose. I reminded her that her brother had carried a weight she couldn't fully understand either. He'd spent 27 years knowing something that put him in an impossible position. Every single holiday, every Sunday dinner, every phone call. That didn't excuse keeping the secret, but it explained the pain he was also living with. We talked carefully about the question of searching for her biological mother. I didn't push her in either direction. What I did help her understand was that the search, if she chose to do it, wouldn't be about replacing anything. It would be about filling in a blank. There's a difference between needing more and needing to know, and only Renata could decide which one she was dealing with. By the time we wrapped up what I'd call the main chapter of our work together, she hadn't made a decision about searching. She told me she wasn't ready yet, but she said something in one of our last sessions that I've thought about a lot since. She said, "I think what's changed is that I'm not afraid of the answer anymore. Whatever I find or don't find, I can hold it now. I couldn't have said that 6 months ago." That's not a small thing. That's the work. I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want you to think about it. Have you ever discovered something about your family, something that was hidden, something that changed how you understood your own story, and had to figure out how to hold on to love at the same time you were processing a kind of betrayal? How did you find your way through that? I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. These conversations matter, and your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. If this story moved you, please consider liking it and subscribing to Kinshade Stories. We're here every week with real stories told honestly. Take care of yourselves. See you next time.